All right, so in this week's lesson, we're going to talk about blues phrasing, and I'm going to give you a simple formula that really just involves one note. If you can visualize the one note for the key of the song, you can build your entire solo off of that note, using that one note as an anchor. It's really more of a formula for playing lead. And I'm doing this for those of you that struggle with using all this information you're learning. I know how frustrating that is when you're learning scales and triads and chord shapes and all this stuff all over the fretboard. It's a lot of information, and how do you even start a solo? How do you take that information and start using it? And so that's what I want to give you as a formula for that, some structure behind that so that you can start creating music. And it's not that difficult. That's the thing. Sometimes we just tend to overthink this stuff. I know I'm just as bad at that as doing that as anybody. And so sometimes you just have to step back and just sort of keep it simple. So here's a little sample of what we're going to be working towards. So in this video, we're going to break it all down, and we're going to start with one note. If you can see this one note in one spot on the fretboard, you can build your entire lead off of that. Your 1, 4, 5, and how to stay in the key of the song and all of that. So if you'd like to watch the part 2 video in this lesson, download the tablature, download the MP3 jam track for everything that we're going to talk through. You can get all those extra materials for this lesson by going to activemelody.com and doing a search for EP629. Okay, so we're going to be learning a blues in the key of D. So our 3 chords in this, our 1, 4, 5 chord, are going to be D for the 1, G for the 4, and A for the 5 chord, D, G, and A. So the first thing I want you to do is find a D note on your 2nd string. So take your index finger, you're going to play it with your index finger too, because that puts your hand in the right position. So we're going to be here on the 3rd fret, 2nd string. Now if you don't know the note names on your 2nd string, you're just going to have to learn them. So that's going to be our formula. As long as you can find the note name for the key of the song on your 2nd string, you're set up to do all the stuff we're going to talk through. So that's going to be our root note there, our D note. Now the first thing I want you to do is let's just get our chord shape that we're playing out of. So we're going to look at our D chord using the C shape. So this is going to be a blues starting out of the C shape here. So if you look inside that shape, now you don't have to make this chord, I'm just showing you kind of where we are. And you'll notice I got my pinky on the 5th fret, and then I've got my index finger on the 2nd fret. So between frets 2 and 5, that's where we're going to play our entire lead here. So notice inside of that C shape, I've also got these same 3 notes are there, this triad, that's the D triad, and that's the D shape we're all familiar with when it comes to playing a D chord in 1st position. I just wanted to point out that that's inside of the C shape. Some of you knew that, some of you may not. Anyway, that's our root note. Now, inside that C shape, we've got our major pentatonic scale pattern 4. Now, most of everything we're going to be playing are on the top 3 strings, for the most part. We will hit the 4th string in a spot, maybe even the 5th, but most of it's going to be on the top 3 strings. As most of your solos tend to be, that's pretty common. So hopefully you're with me. So far we've got our C shape, we've got our major pentatonic scale, pattern 4 in that C shape. Now when it comes to playing lead, we're going to start with that D note there. And then we're going to use our ring finger up here on the 5th fret, 2nd string. That's one of the notes in your major pentatonic scale. And we're also going to let our middle finger hit the 4th fret, 3rd string. So our fingers line up perfectly. We've got fret 3, fret 5, and fret 4. Now this little shape here, I've called this in the past, I've called this a triangle shape. To me it looks like a triangle with a point pointing towards me. But when it comes to major pentatonic scale, pattern 4, this is a great little area to improvise and get all kinds of ideas out of. And by the way, this 5th fret, 2nd string is a bendable note. So I realize that's taking you to another note, which we'll get to that in a minute. But for now, just looking at our fretted notes, we've got these 3, with this one being bendable. Okay, so This note works as a landing note because it's the root note. It's also a note in your chord. All right, now let's go down to the third string. So we've got fret 4 and fret 2. This second fret is another note that's in that D chord, right? That would be the 5th in your chord. So this note is a great note to land on. This note is a great note to land on. These other two notes, those two, you can use those as more passing tones. They don't sound so good to land on when you're playing over the D chord. So all that I'm doing there is just out of this little shape here in pattern 4 of your major pentatonic scale, but it's focusing on those two notes from your D chord. Let's look at the first string now. 2nd fret, 5th fret. Those are two more notes from your major pentatonic scale. But now, these notes are going to sound great, either of them, because those are both notes in your D chord. That's in your D chord, right? It's your 3rd. And this note is in your D chord. Look, it's the same as this note. It's just an octave higher. So that would be your 5th up here. So you've got your root, 5th, another one up here, and then the 3rd. Remember, if you're doing a minor key thing, you flat the 3rd. So you get the sad minor sound. But we're not dealing with minor chords in this. We're just going to be looking at major. So now we can land on any of these notes because they're notes from the chord. And so just remember the other notes from your pentatonic scale, the other two notes, they're more passing notes, but these are safe notes to land on. So that's your first piece of information. Let me give you another idea. So let's look at chromatic notes. We're going to look on the 3rd string and on the 1st string. So on the 3rd string, between these two notes, between the 2nd and 4th fret, you can play that passing note, right? You can play that note. You don't want to land on it necessarily, but use it as a passing tone. But on the 1st string, going between the 2nd fret and the 5th fret, those sound great. In fact, you can always slide into that 3rd from the flat 3rd. Anywhere you've got a 3, you can always slide from the flat 3 into the 3, and that always sounds good. That's another little idea to remember. Doesn't that sound cool? That's just walking chromatically. So now we have our root note, and we've got our major pentatonic scale, and we've got the chromatic notes on the 1st string and on the 3rd string. Let's now add the minor pentatonic scale, but we're going to still connect everything to this root note here, this D note on the 3rd fret, 2nd string. So your minor pentatonic scale in this position, in this hand position, would look like this. Or it would sound like this. And that would be minor pentatonic scale pattern 3. That's in this same area. Those two overlap. Everywhere you've got a root note, there's an overlapping major and minor pentatonic scale. Let me say that again. Everywhere you've got a root note, you've got an overlapping major and minor pentatonic scale. You just have to remember that. They're all over the fretboard. But for now, we're just looking at this area. So we've got all the way down to this D note down here, right? And you can hear how that changes the mood completely. It sounds much sadder. And listen to this. You can throw in that blue note, which would be in your blues scale, but that's also like a little chromatic move, you can think of it that way, between the 5th fret and the 3rd fret on that 1st string in your minor pentatonic scale. You can slide into it. There's that same blue note down on the 4th string. So now with that information, I can do a lot. Let me put on a jam track that has just a D chord looping over and over again, and then we'll talk through some of this stuff, and I'll start to demonstrate what it sounds like in context. Okay, so we've got our D that's just looping here. There's my D note, 3rd fret, 2nd string, the root note. Let's add this 5th fret, 2nd string. And then let's come down to the 4th fret, 3rd string. This is the little triangle. We can do a little bend here on this 5th fret, 2nd string. Now if you can't bend it, just slide. That's okay. Look at that. Now I'm down on the 3rd string. So remember, the safe notes to land on are this one, this one, this one. You can hear how it sounds great over the chord. Even this one. Now let's work in some of this chromatic stuff that we talked about. I'm landing on the safe note. This one's safe. Let's do some chromatic stuff. See me sliding in from the flat 3 to the 3? Landing on the 5th down here. Let's switch to the minor pentatonic. By the way, this is the flat 7 from my 1 chord. There's adding in that blue note. Look at that. I went back to the 3rd and then the root. Those are 2 notes from the chord. Strings 4 and 2. So I can just easily pivot back and forth between my major pentatonic sound and my minor pentatonic. All right, so far we've looked at 1 chord, just the root, which is our D chord. And we related everything back to 1 note right here on the 2nd string. So now let's look at the 4 chord. Our 4 chord, when we're playing in the key of D, is G. But I don't really need to know that as long as I'm thinking chord shapes. And if I'm just thinking about this, I can pretty much memorize where my 4 chord is in relation to this chord. And it's right here, and they're in the same neighborhood. Look at how minimal of a movement my hand makes. In fact, this root note, this D note, is in the 4 chord. And so I'm just mentioning that just so that you can get your bearings. Now, we're not really going to play a whole lot of that 4 chord, but any of these notes would be safe notes to land on while the song is playing over the 4 chord. But what I'm going to do, instead of doing that, is when the song goes to the 4 chord, we're going to play the minor pentatonic scale of the key of the song. I just wanted to mention where we are in terms of chord shape, because I am going to come up here and play this note, and I want you to understand why that note works so well. It's because it's the flat 7 of my 4 chord. So if the 4 chord is a G, and I was playing a G7, that's the flat 7 in your G7, in your dominant 7. And so I can hit that note when the song is playing over the 4 chord, and it's going to sound great. It's going to sound very stable. Any of these notes would sound stable. But I'm just going to keep to this formula of playing the minor pentatonic scale of D for the 4 chord. But notice that note is in there, right? Okay, so now we're going to loop the D chord and the 4 chord. There's a quick change to the 4. You can just ignore that in terms of your solo. Just keep playing your D stuff. Now here it goes to the 4 chord. Watch this. There's a flat 7 of the 4 chord. Now watch this minor pentatonic. That was the D minor pentatonic scale. See how good that sounds over the 4 chord? Now it's going to loop again. Let's start it back again. Here's the 1 chord. There's that little triangle. I love that area. I can play a whole solo right there. All right, here's the 4 chord. Here's my triad. Right? Back to the 1. Let's do it one more time just to get the sound. All right, here we are. Back to the 1. There's my chromatic stuff. Now here we are in the 4 chord. I'm just going to play the D minor pentatonic scale with a chromatic note. Then back to the major. Okay, so we've looked at the 1 chord in relation to the root note. We've looked at the 4 chord in relation to that root note. Now the 5 chord in this neighborhood would be here. This would be my A chord, so I'd have to ask myself, where's my nearest A? Because that's the 5 chord when you're playing in the key of D. And it would be here, using the G shape. And it would look like this if I'm just playing the top part of it. Or here's the 7 version of it. So it would be here. It's still between frets 2 and 5 there. But when it comes to the root note, now the root note worked fine for the 1 chord as a note to land on. It worked fine for the 4 chord. But when it comes to the 5 chord, you couldn't play this root note. It's not going to work for the 5 chord. So the most logical step to take from this root note when you're playing with the 5 chord is to play the note right behind the 5 chord, which would be the 3 of your 5 chord. So that would be, of my A chord, that would be the 3rd. So just remember, whatever your root is, you can just step back one fret behind it and play that note, and that would be a nice stable note to land on for your 5 chord. Or you could come up here to this 5th fret 2nd string. Now that's another note that's in your major pentatonic scale for D. We've already talked about that. It's in the triangle, right? So that note would work for your 5 chord as well. That's the 5th of your A. So either that note or that note, they're both on that 2nd string. Those would be great notes to land on. And you can connect those two chromatically, just like you could on the 1st string for the 1 chord. Remember, you could slide into it? You can do the same thing here. Slide into that. Because you're going from the flat 3 to the 3 of your 5 chord, just like you were doing for the 1 chord in that other example. So this would be the other stable note, which would be your A note, 2nd fret, 3rd string. So any of these notes are stable notes. You've also got the flat 7, and that would work, which would be this note up here on the 3rd fret, 1st string. You've got another one down here. So just what you need to do, though, is you need to relate everything I'm saying back to your root note, so that if you can find this note, you can unlock the rest of this stuff. When it comes to real-world application, your fingers end up just kind of going into places that they're familiar. They do their little finger dance. They know what to do. So I know when I'm playing a blues, when it's the 5 chord, I can just step back one, and it works great for the 5 chord. Now, that's all you really need to know for the 5 chord in this example. I didn't really play a scale or anything. I just played the notes of the chord, and now you can see where they're coming from. Now, if you wanted to throw in a scale, the scale that's going to work the best in this area would be your 5 chord, your A minor pentatonic scale, pattern 5. It's right there. Any of those notes are going to sound great just in that moment where the 5 chord passes by, but you don't have to do that. That's getting, I think, a little too complicated in this example. We're just trying to get simple phrasing. So what I would do, I would just hit some of those notes, those safe notes to land on from your 5 chord, and play those in this neighborhood. And now you've got the whole formula, your 1 chord, your 4 chord, your 5 chord, and you can relate it all back to one note. So that makes it super easy to access everything. Let me play along with the jam track now, and we'll talk about all of this stuff over the 1, 4, and 5 chord. Okay, so now we're going to have the 1, 4, and 5 chord. We're going to start with the 1 chord. There's my little triangle. I landed down here on the 5th of my 1 chord. Now here's the 4 chord. I'm going to play the minor pentatonic scale. Back to the major. Here's the 5 chord. Watch this. I'm going to step back. Hit the notes of that 5 chord. And then back to my 1 chord. Notice for the 4 chord, I just did the same thing. I hit that root because that's in the 4 chord as well. I followed the quick change there. Here's the flat 7 of my 1 chord. There's the minor pentatonic scale over the 4 chord. See how it's kind of formulaic like this? You can just follow this formula. Here's the 5 chord. Watch this chromatic. Isn't that cool? Now you know where it comes from. All right, so hopefully you're starting to see this and getting excited about it. And just remember, it doesn't have to be complicated. You can keep this stuff very simple. And sometimes some of the best phrasing is just simple. It's the way you would sing it, and it's not like cumbersome to somebody to listen to. And leave a comment and let me know if you like this, because I could do a follow-up to this where I take that section that we just looked at and then connect another section, another area of the fretboard, and show you how to flow back and forth between them. And we could look at other formulas. There's lots of ways we could dissect this. This is just one formula, one way of doing the blues. But if you can kind of stick to something like this, it makes it a whole lot easier when you're starting. You're not starting from scratch. You've got some kind of formula that you can plug some things into and start making your own expressions happen. So come join us for part 2, where I'll go over the little composition that I've pulled together. And remember, you can get that part 2 video and the tablature and the MP3 jam track for all of that, if you're interested in that, by going to activemelody.com and doing a search for EP629. All right, leave a comment. Let me know what you think of this. I'll see you in part 2.